It was the year 1830, and East Europe was flaming with war. A stagecoach coming from Warsaw, Poland, rattled towards Austria. Among the passengers was a frail, sad-looking young man, the Polish pianist Frédéric Chopin. He gazed grimly out of the window, anxious over the possible fate of his native country, his family, and his friends. The Russian armies were about to invade Warsaw, and for a long time, there would be no possibility to find out what had become of his dear ones and whether they were safe. Beset by grief and worry, how would he play his recitals in Vienna, which he had prepared with such high hopes? Frédéric remembered his last evening at home, when his friends had come to bid him farewell. Their parting gift was a silver goblet filled with Polish earth. "Keep this with you always," they had said to him, "so that the spirit of your homeland may be with you wherever you go." He would always be loyal to his beloved fatherland. Could he only fight for it? But his delicate health forbade military service. Chopin was not strong enough to make a good soldier. He would instead, through his art, bring the name of Poland before the world so that people everywhere might see the justice of her cause. And someday soon, please God, Poland would be free again. Chopin's childhood years had been very happy. He was born near Warsaw in 1810 as the son of a Polish mother and a French father. Both parents were fond of music. Nicholas played the violin and the flute, and his wife accompanied him on the piano. Little Frédéric's favorite place was under the piano, where he sat for hours when his mother sang the beautiful Polish folk songs, or when Ludovica, the eldest daughter, had her piano lessons. So attentive was the child that Ludovica decided to pass on a little of her musical knowledge to him. She began to show Frédéric how to play, and he learned everything at such an amazing speed that the 7-year-old teacher had to ask her mother for help. Soon the parents realized that Frédéric's talent was unusual and should be developed by the best teachers available. renowned teacher by the name of Juini came to the house, first twice a week, then more often, and finally every day. The old pianist was fascinated by the little boy who surmounted every difficulty with such ease and who could play any tune by ear after he had heard it once. Frederick was given an excellent musical education. He learned to understand and to love Bach, Mozart, and all the great classic composers. At the same time, his vivid imagination searched for melodies of his own. Often, when the lesson was done, the boy would play his little compositions which the proud teacher wrote down for him. Soon the stories about the child prodigy got around in Warsaw. Some people even thought he might become a second Mozart. Frederick was invited to the houses of some aristocratic families and enchanted everyone with his playing. A public performance was arranged for the young pianist. In 1818, at the age of 8, Master Chopin stepped out on the concert stage of a big hall which was filled with a glittering audience. He himself looked like a little prince in his black velvet suit with a big lace collar. The performance was a tremendous success. Shouts of joy and bravos sounded after each number. Never before had a child been heard to play with the dash and skill of a born virtuoso. As the years went by, Frederick's old teacher felt that his pupil had outgrown him. He advised his parents to enroll him at the Warsaw Conservatory, an institute of great reputation. Now came years of even more intense studies for Frederick. He spent long hours at the piano, practicing diligently. But the growing boy became more and more interested in composition, guided by an understanding and competent teacher, Joseph Elsner. This great musician was well aware of Chopin's uncommon gifts. Before he had reached the age of 15, some of his charming piano pieces were already published, among them a rondo and 2 mazurkas. The lively Polish dance rhythms appealed to Frederick very much. Later, he was to glorify them in many masterful compositions. Several months had passed, and Chopin was busily attending to his duties at the conservatory. He had made many friends among his classmates, gifted and promising music students, Yet there was no doubt about his superiority. After the day's work, the young people often played their own compositions for each other, discussing them ardently until long after midnight. Into this happy life fell a terrible blow for Frederick. His favorite sister, Amelia, died of a lung disease, not yet 14 years old. The frail and sensitive boy was so overcome by grief that the parents were worried about his health. He would sit for hours in the half-darkened music room, talking to nobody, softly playing new melodies to himself, quite different ones from those he had composed so far. They were of a sweet sadness, plaintive and yet supremely beautiful. All of his heart's sorrow was expressed in them. In 1829, 5 students of the Warsaw Conservatory set out on a journey to other centers of music outside their hometown. Chopin was among them. For him, the time had come to appear as a concert pianist in some foreign cities. After a few days of traveling, the party arrived at the Austrian border and reached the capital, Vienna. Frederick entered the city which had been the home of Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, and Schubert. How excited he was! Some important people, to whom he had brought letters of introduction, were so impressed by the young man's playing that they urged him to give a recital. Soon it was all arranged. Chopin played 2 of his own works with orchestra, variations and a rondo. As an encore, he excelled in free improvisations on themes suggested by the public. The audience went wild with enthusiasm. Chopin had conquered Vienna on the first attempt. Chopin was again on his way to Vienna, leaving behind him war-torn Poland. Little did he foresee that he would never return to his beloved fatherland. Chopin had arrived in Vienna full of high hopes and expectations. But this time, things were different. Other pianists had appeared in the city and won great fame. Managers remained cool towards the young Polish musician, despite his success of the year before. Chopin was depressed, lonely, and homesick. When he heard the news from Warsaw telling about the partition of Poland, he fell into deep despair. It was then that Chopin wrote his heroic revolutionary etude, filled with a glowing spirit of rebellion against the oppressors. Chopin decided to leave Vienna, which had nothing further to offer him, and set out for Paris, there to make a name for himself. Paris, a world center of art and culture, delighted Chopin. At once, his gloomy mood changed. Just to look at the beautiful city on the Seine River was sheer joy. Here he knew renowned composers such as Liszt, Mendelssohn, Paganini, Berlioz, Rossini had their homes. The poets Victor Hugo, Balzac, and the German Heinrich Heine, and the famous painter Delacroix, they all lived in Paris. What a fascinating place.